Yeah. So, hello, Wands and Franz patrons. Welcome to a very, very special Patreon episode with listener, friend of the pod, like OG pod friend, Shannon, who has probably one of the best names in the world, if I do say so myself. So we're really excited to be here with you today, Shannon.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here too. It's exciting to finally see you guys because I feel like we've known each other like forever, even though we've really met IRL.
I know. Well, I was talking to Eric this morning. I was like, I'm really excited because I've like texted with you, I've emailed with you, but I was like, I've never actually talked to Shannon. Right. I was like, so this will be either wonderful or terrible. I was like, either she's going to be as great as I assume, or she's going to be a real fucking creep. And then this is going to be a strange Patreon bonus.
This is going to be a weird Patreon bonus episode. Actually,
really watchable way, I would assume, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
No,
totally.
But no, so we do have you here in your capacity as a jewelry maker because we kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about the unofficial title of this episode even was witching your craft because I can't resist a pun. I cannot resist a pun.
No, Nick is the resident dad joke maker, and I do just have to like real quick. So this is made by Shannon.
Oh,
this is like a forest witch necklace.
I did the same, and then so this is the aventurine bracelet I got for my birthday almost a year ago. That was.
This is my moss agate ring. So we're obviously like fans as well. This is like mutual adoration society, baby. Shannon makes beautiful jewelry. Haxon Wolf on Instagram and on Etsy. I mean, y'all have seen us reposting her stuff. I'm like obsessed. So I guess first question is like, why jewelry? Like, how did you get into making jewelry?
So I went to a 4-year college for art, which is a horrible idea, and I cannot recommend it to anyone. So it's funny because like 2/3 of the way through my college degree, I was like, like I've made a mistake because I don't want to teach art. And there's actually very, obviously it's super hard to be just an actual full-time paid artist. So I realized that what I really enjoyed was more like tactile things. So jewelry, and I mean, I've always been a huge fan of jewelry as like personal adornment and like everything that goes behind like coordinating and kind of, mixing and matching stones and that kind of stuff. And then obviously like being a witch, stones.
Yeah.
Crystals. It's like kind of a prerequisite.
Exactly.
Kind of a prerequisite. But I would say I feel like that does come through because you do have a very strong aesthetic. So
yes.
And I did kind of want to say like I love your aesthetic. It's very almost kind of gothic, like but like gothic, like a gothic cathedral, like it's very. I live in a castle and all of my husbands have died under mysterious circumstances, leaving me large sums of money.
Yeah. Right. But also the fae are here.
But also
like, I feel like there's like a dash of the woods. Like maybe your castle is hidden away in the forest with like sprites running around.
So
I mean, that is the dream, is to live in some like it has to be like kind of an abandoned, like the ruins of a castle though.
Yeah.
Not like practically living in a castle, but just like the crumbling outline of a castle where I can also be visited by like all the little forest creatures and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like maybe you live in a cottage in the forest by the ruins of the castle, and you go out to the ruins to stare longingly out over the mist.
Exactly. Yes.
Have either of y'all watched the most recent season of It's Always Sunny? Speaking of castles, so they film it. They film it in Ireland, and there's like this hilarious storyline where they want to like rent a castle. And then it's like the reality of renting like an old castle, and it's like totally trashed, and there's like not plumbing. And it's really funny because I was like, this is like the reality of every witch's dream. Is it's like yeah, the concept of a castle in the woods is great. But like I'm
Right.
a big fan of baths and
Yeah.
showers
Right.
and like
Internet, like I have to have Wi-Fi.
yeah. But I love
I
that. Yeah, your aesthetic is very, very strong. And obviously, I think we're getting a good taste of that with your background area
yeah,
here.
Thank
hell
you.
yeah.
I was
So
telling
yeah,
Nick earlier that like I used to work in a job that was super super stressful but paid pretty good. So like this is how I got my dopamine for the day, was just like I bought another crystal sphere and an antique brass candlestick to hold it. Like that was how I got through the day. So
I get it. Yeah, that is like where I am at in my journey right
yeah.
now as well. But yeah, so your aesthetic has obviously been honed, it seems like, over years and years. And I know recently you talked about getting more into like the sabots with some of your jewelry. I think the Lupercalia like
oh
set of stuff you
yes.
did was like iconic.
Thank you.
So what sort of like drove that decision and your crafting?
It was really kind of for me more than anything because like as a witch it's hard because you get so caught up with life and work and oh the Sabbath falls on a Wednesday. Well, I'm working, so I hate it for you.
Right.
But I really wanted to be more aware of the wheel of the year and the passing of time and celebrate that. And I thought that this would force me to be more aware of that kind of thing. And B, give me an outlet to where like even if I don't have time to do a full in bulk ritual, like I made a piece of art and that's going to be there forever. So
Right. And then it's almost like by helping someone else also
right.
to get into their wheel of the year stuff, like
Exactly.
you're doing it by proxy. Well, and that's kind of how I feel with what me and Shannon do, is
Mhm.
that even by like getting other people into witchcraft and like into recognizing the seasons and all of the great natural power that's out there, that you are kind of like you're like doing witchcraft by proxy because now you have other people
Yeah.
involved. So it's like
Yeah. It's like
that's
I feel like it's the way creatives are able
yeah,
to sometimes tap into
Mhm.
it because it is hard because like I feel like Nick and I try to be very upfront about that. I think being 21st century witches, it's like Instagram aesthetic makes it look like some of these people are just fucking frolicking in like
Right.
moss covered woods all day. But like bitches got to eat. Like we've got
yeah,
to go
yeah,
out and
yeah,
like
yeah.
earn money because we're in late stage capitalism. So
Right.
I do love that idea of like kind of consciously like adding that into your craft. How has that felt for you doing that?
Well, it's only been for a couple of months now, but I can really tell, like, I can tell that I'm appreciating the differences, the subtle. Well, I mean, I live in Alabama, so it's like winter, fall, spring, summer,
Yeah.
summer,
Yeah,
summer.
yeah, yeah. Very
So
very much the same in Texas. Very
Yeah.
much the same in Texas.
there you go. Yeah. So and we don't. Your LA is just like 70 all the time, right? Is that like
Yeah, it's like we've got dry season and like cooler, rainier season.
gotcha?
Like that's really it. It gets really hot for like 2 weeks out of the year and the rest of the time it's like pretty mild. It's like a wonderful terrible thing. I feel like
Right.
I do love the podcast for that and like for me following like the lunar cycles helps for
Mhm.
me cuz there's like no passing of time in Los Angeles, which
Right.
feels very odd.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely, like I said, like made me more aware of and more appreciative. Like I'd always kind of written in bulk off as like, it's just like it's like pre-spring holiday, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of a weird time of the year even.
Right, yeah. But like
Yeah.
for me, making the necklace especially, like I felt like it was easier to kind of appreciate the combination of like it's still cold but like green stuff is happening, like things are sprouting up out of we don't get snow here, but things are sprouting up out of like the cold ground, and like that combination, and it really definitely made me appreciate that holiday a lot more than I've ever even considered,
Yeah,
really.
well, it's a unique combo,
Mhm.
because I do feel like in a way like Ostara and Beltane like are kind of similar vibes,
Yeah.
like or at least to me, like, but maybe that is also just because I'm in Texas and the weather is
Right.
remarkably similar.
Well, and
for
it's like,
both.
especially for like the harvest holidays or whatever,
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
not harvesty here in Alabama until like December. So it's
Right.
like 95 degrees on Samhain most of the time. Like it's not like I get to be like sweaters and pumpkin spice lattes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? 'Cause I'm like, I mean, I could, but it would be ridiculous because it's 85
Yeah.
degrees out.
I'm always like angrily sweating and drinking a pumpkin spice latte in October because I'm like, God damn it, it's fall.
Yeah.
It's
It doesn't feel
time.
like
It's
fall.
time.
Yeah. I love that. So I think living in Alabama, so Nick and I obviously grew up like bumfuck nowhere in Texas. What's it like being a witch in the South? I think it's such an interesting experience. Like, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, like do you feel isolated at all in your local community, or like do you have local witches that you practice with or see or
So yes and no. I tend to be super introverted anyway. So like it's funny because
Capricorn, we know this about you. We know
Yeah,
this about
yeah.
you.
But actually since my Saturn return, which was I'm 33 now, so it was like a couple of years ago. I've noticed myself kind of seeking out more of a tribe, whereas previously I'm like, don't want it, not interested, don't need it, practice by myself, don't want to be involved. Because especially like for me, I have a very specific way that I practice, and it's very tangible. I just recently started working with a deity, and I mean, I'd never done anything even remotely close to that before. It's very like secular, very not woo-woo, and there's so much woo-woo everywhere in pagan communities. So, but I'm slowly introducing a little more woo-woo, and so I am finding myself reaching out more to the community. I am lucky and I live in kind of a Goldilocks zone. So like I'm close enough to Birmingham, Alabama, and I work in Birmingham. And there's actually a pretty good pagan community in Birmingham. I mean, you've got your typical like creepy dudes that come to stuff, you know what I mean? Like you do in
Yeah.
There's always like the greasy dude in a kilt in the corner that you're just like, oh my God, you are paying way too much attention to the 16 and 17-year-old girls here.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what, okay. And then you're like, hey, come, like to the younger girls, you're like, come here. Just
yeah.
Sit with me. Sit with me.
You have to sit with me. But you know, I'm really lucky because growing up, my parents were always very, very supportive of everything about me. Like they never made me feel like I had to hide who I was, or whether it was, you know, my religion, my, you know, sexual orientation, anything like that. Not that I mean, yeah, they've just always been so supportive.
Well, I feel like I've had a similar thing, you know, where it's like other people in my situation, I do feel for them because it's like being in Texas, a lot of people have, or in the South, I mean, just in general, a lot of people have very, very religious parents who like impose that on their children.
Yeah.
And I would say like I kind of lucked out as well, like being in Texas and having, I mean, my parents are kind of like libertarians, which I think is like the Southern thing to say, because they're like, it's
a Southern way of saying like, I don't want to be identified as a Republican, but I also, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
but they're not like very super liberal either. But like, I guess kind of their thing is they don't give a fuck as long as you're not actually bothering them.
It's the mind your fucking business wing of libertarianism. Like my
I do respect that. Like, there's a bunch of like Ron Paul does be saying crazy stuff on the internet, but you know, like the whole you do you, I'll do me.
Yes. I'm very you do you, I'll do me. Like, and it's so weird to think how many people are so concerned with what other people are doing in their lives that it like they must be, to have these views, they must be just thinking about it constantly and like letting it drive them crazy. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like,
It's crazy. I think to me, I feel like libertarianism kind of falls on like the other end of like the communism spectrum, where I'm like, both of these are wonderful ideas in theory.
Right.
I was like, the problem is in practice, you can't fucking trust people to like hold up their end of the bargain. But I love knowing that you've like got a little bit of a community. And I think obviously,
Well,
one
you're,
of
and you're obviously part of our community.
our community. That's what I was
but-
gonna say. Yeah, I
but
think
this
the
is very-
internet
this-
has really allowed that to
Yeah.
happen in cool ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, I know, so I live in a place called Asheville, Alabama, which is like 45 minutes from Birmingham. There's nothing out here. I mean, we couldn't even keep a subway open, for God's sakes. Like, our subway attached to the gas station closed because, anyway. So it's a very, very small town. And I'm definitely not active in like the community in Asheville for sure, because there's just nothing here that, like, when I'm home, I like to be home, away from people. I work in retail. Like, this is why I chose to live where I do, so I could have privacy, be away from people. Like, my backyard is basically the woods. I don't have neighbors. Like, that's why I chose to live where I do. So it's like, when I decide I want to be social, I go to Birmingham. And when I decide it's time to come home and be private, I come home. And having the option for both is really, really great. Because I know a lot of people that live in more rural communities don't have that city that's super close that, you know, they're used to traveling to for work and that kind of stuff. And it makes them feel very isolated. But I've been really lucky to, you know, and I mean, I'm totally out of the broom closet to everyone in my life. Like, everyone I work with knows, all my family knows. Like, we were actually playing Dirty Santa at our last Christmas, and somebody was going to try to steal one of the gifts that I had stolen from someone or whatever. And they were like, I don't know, y'all, she does witchcraft. Like, you might want to.
Yeah.
Everybody's super chill and just like, and I have plenty of people in my family that are very religious, you know what I mean? But they're also very understanding and open to different ways that people worship, different religions. And I don't even necessarily know that I would call my witchcraft religion, because it's really so secular. But I'm definitely not religious in the Christian sense either, which is how they pretty much interpret religion. So
the idea that is foisted upon you, like being raised Christian, of this like faith, like this unwavering faith, it really does kind of feel like brainwashing in a sense. So like they get so mad when you just even have too many questions.
Right.
And like that is not a place that I think I would ever be with any belief. Like,
no,
you have to keep your mind open. That's how you evolve as a person. And like, that's how you don't get bogged down in stuff like that.
That's
like,
how you don't end up in a fucking cult. Because I'm like, I don't want to do anything that tells me I need to put my like logical brain on a shelf.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, if you're ever in a situation where you have to like quantify to someone, it's like this isn't a cult. Like, if you have to say you're not in a cult, you're probably in a cult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I hate to tell you this, but if it's even crossed your mind to say you're not in one, you probably are, you know?
Yeah.
But I had seen actually, and I think I talked about it on the pod a little bit, this great term kind of being bandied about on the internet, skeptical witches. And I would say I very much identify as like a skeptical witch, because it's like, I like the practice of it. Like, I do feel like, it was kind of like you were saying with, you know, kind of making jewelry in tune with the seasons and like connecting with that. It's like, I definitely need something in my life to like keep me in that cycle. And I would say like witchcraft is that for me. I also, you know, it's like, once I started getting into astrology and really kind of feeling in tune with where we're at with that, like, I don't know. And it's like, I think it's a very human thing to like want to just feel something and like to find things in your life that like put good energy in that space in your heart. And it's like, you know, I think, and then there is the sense of community. And like, honestly, it's like, I always famously have really just loved the aesthetics of witchcraft over like, you know, if you can pick any way to pray, which I mean, you can, like, it's a free country. That's why we're on this podcast talking about witchcraft. And like, I don't know, it's like, you know, if you pick any way to pray, I want to, you know, like put flowers in my hair and be outside and hang out with trees and shit. Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's too like it again, like I hesitate to call the way I practice a religion just because it's also constantly changing too. I think if you probably talked to me 10 years ago and said, okay, you practice witchcraft, what does that mean to you? It'd be a completely different answer than it would be today. You know what I mean? And like, let's face it, our generation was ruined once we saw the craft, right? Like, we were like, that's it. Like, I have to live my life that way or I'm going to be, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it is, you know, you get kind of flack a lot of the time for aesthetic. And there's both sides of the street, right? So there are people that are like, all you care about is aesthetic and blah, 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 blah. And then there are other people that are like, aesthetic doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of live in the middle of that, I think, because like, I get that there should always be a meaning behind your aesthetic, but like purely visual information is still like valid. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so you get people on both sides of the street really that are critical of aesthetic.
But I mean, you know, it's like every great organized religion has a strong aesthetic. Like there is a lot of power in that.
It's like, have you met Catholics?
Right.
Yeah, let's like
I always tell people if I had to be like a Christian religion, I would probably be Catholic because it's honestly the closest to paganism that you can really get without being.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, saints, incense, like stained glass, I'm on board, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
And it's like, even, you know, like they like having a cult to the Virgin Mary, like really even kind of honoring some goddess energy. Like they don't really fuck with the Virgin Mary in Protestantism.
No,
which is
Protestantism is so boring.
It's it's such a man's thing. Like obviously a man.
As a female, it's like super hard for me to get into a religion that is like completely masculine. Like,
yeah,
I've never even been super interested in like the god goddess archetype or whatever. Like, no offense, Nick, but
no. I would say I think actually you're not wrong there. I mean, it's like in kind of the same way that I have always, and Shannon knows this. I guess I have to say Shannon C, because we have both Shannons on the line.
I know, right?
But you know, this is like I've always kind of sought out female friendship. So I would say I'm drawn to feminine energy, and you know, in a way, I feel like there is so much toxic masculinity in the world, like really and truly, like not even I know they talk about it forever on the internet, but masculinity in the year of our Lord 2022 is actually so toxic and fragile, and I see like strength, and I see something that I admire in feminine energy. And so I agree. Like I fucking agree.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's a lot easier for like people who are into feminine energy, like for whatever reason, like in terms of like gender fluidity and that kind of stuff, which I'm certainly not going to get into because I can't speak to it in any way really.
Right.
But like, I'm sure it's a lot easier for someone who's feminine to flow into masculine energy than it is for people that are considered like male presenting or masculine or whatever to flow into feminine energy, like in terms of like socially, like it's way more acceptable. You know what I mean? If I were to
it's because
it sucks, you know what I mean? But it's just like the world that we live in right now, unfortunately.
It's culturally because we prioritize like, and we place value in masculinity. So it's like when women become masculine or more masculine.
Oh no. Did she freeze?
Yeah.
When people move more into femininity.
You froze for a second there.
You froze for a second.
Oh no, so did y'all. Okay. No. I'm back.
Well, I mean, Nick didn't freeze.
But we're back. But no, but it's like they really did goddess energy dirty when they decided to put like Zeus in charge, you know, or like
the original
because originally, you know, like you had like Astargatis in Assyria, like just full on like mother goddess energy. And then you do have like Gaia, and then they even kind of like make a story out of it where they like, you know, like they kill Cronus and then Gaia and then Zeus takes over from there. And it's like, okay, well, actually, like the earth is still our mother, basically. Like that, it's just weird to be like, and then Sky Daddy took over.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
No.
It's like we just get so out of balance when we place like one above the other, and
Right.
almost like there's supposed to be a balance between the two for us to be most whole
Right.
in that wild. But I think to just kind of like back up, Shannon, something that you said earlier that I think really speaks to a lot of the value of like the witchcraft community is talking about how I feel like this is a place where there is so much space for your practice to change and evolve over time. And so I'd love to know, like, what does your witchcraft practice look like nowadays?
So nowadays it's very, like I said, more into like tactile, tangible stuff. A lot of candle magic, jars, jar magic. Jars for everything, jars, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I am personally always, because I've always had such a like ADD mind, like it's really hard for me to visualize and meditate, which I'm sure is common for a lot of people, because it's like just sit here and be quiet in my brain, like, you know what I mean? So it, if I can be physically doing something, especially like with jar magic where you're like creating something, you're adding ingredients to something, like that's easier for me to connect to, like the energy of whatever you think you're tapping into, the universe, your higher self, however you want to quantify that. But it's easier for me. And again, because probably I am an artist that works with my hands, like anything tactile is really how I get connected to that energy.
I do feel the same. Like I have talked about it on the pod before, where I struggle with that as well. So and I know like keeping your hands busy as
Mhm.
well can really like quiet your inner monologue,
Yes.
which is very helpful in situations like that. And like also like sensory stuff, like when you are
Mhm.
burning incense, and like it can kind of like bring you into that space to have these like sensory things that you can I don't know, like it's not abstract. Like
Right.
it's like it's very like real because you're like there doing something. Like it's not
Exactly.
like meditation
Yeah.
it feels kind of forced when when you have that like inner ADD monologue. And then it's like really, if you ever actually shut my brain the fuck up, I swear it's like it would be like Cotton Eye Joe still playing in the background.
Right. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's like, there's a percentage of people, and I forget what the number is, but it's much higher than I expected, that like don't have an inner monologue at all.
Yeah. Well, also, it's like the people who don't see, like they don't see anything when they read.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
And it's
I was like, oh my God, like 20 to 30% of people just are staring at the page. Like they, d- they're not imagining. I don't know. Cause it's like,
yeah, no, it
Yeah.
mhm.
I can't even conceptualize that because
Well, and it's like
like,
you must go to sleep like that. Like, I mean, you must be like, time to
yeah,
go
yeah,
to bed,
yeah.
and then that's it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Yeah,
That's
like the
those
people who
people.
can't visualize things,
Mhm.
it's very like my Pisces moon does not understand that because it's like
Right,
half of my life is just in my brain.
right.
All the time I'm just like, "Wait, was that something that actually happened or did I just imagine
Oh
that?"
yeah, yeah.
But I do have to say for anyone that has trouble meditating, I know this might not work for everyone, but meditating in the bath is like my jam. I put on like
Mm.
relaxing, like
Mhm.
meditative music and light incense and then like astral project. But again, that is me and that is my crazy full moon in Pisces that just like doesn't behave well.
Right.
I Okay, so since we've kind of talked about books just a little bit, I did have a question that I wanted to ask. So obviously you've been kind of doing your series where you're doing the Sabbath themed jewelry. Is there any like fictional property, like a book or a movie or a show even, that you would want to do a jewelry collection based on?
So many. Um,
Oh, I love that. I love that deep breath.
because it's like, where do I start here? Like, actually, I do have one of the pieces in my collection, is a really gorgeous piece of malachite.
Okay,
And it's
okay.
got like antlers and mushrooms, and it's very much inspired by the forest spirit from Princess Mononoke.
Oh, one
Ooh.
of my very,
Yes.
very favorite movies, which
Yes.
we have talked about, obviously not here in this
Right.
interview that we're doing, but yes, 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 yes.
So like obviously, I mean, Miyazaki is just it's funny because it's like, you know, for people that don't really understand, they're like, you're 33 and you're watching cartoons, and you're like, this is not cartoons for one.
No, no, no.
But
No.
it's like, I mean, you know, again, a generation raised with Miyazaki and Harry Potter. And I mean, there's just our generation, I feel like, is just constantly just like magic, magic, magic. And a lot of these
Mhm.
places, The Last Unicorn, I still watch like once a month probably, because it's just like so visually stunning, and the story is so like weird but awesome. So yes, I do want to eventually do a line for The Last Unicorn specifically, because I think there's a lot of really amazing things that could happen with like the
Yeah.
unicorn Red Bull dynamic.
Yeah.
um, but I also one of my favorite movies aesthetically is Crimson Peak. If you
Oh, yeah,
guys have
that's
ever
such
seen
a
that one,
beautiful movie.
like,
Oh,
I don't care if it's haunted and falling apart. I would 100% live in that house, bugs
Oh
and
my
all. Like,
gosh.
bring
yeah.
it.
That is iconic, and that is the house where all of your husbands have mysteriously died. And
Exactly.
we're
Yeah.
we're coming full circle. We're coming full circle
Right.
with your aesthetic here.
I love
Um,
that.
so yeah, like, and you know, that's one of those things too, where it's like half the time you don't really even realize that you're being influenced by things in the media like that until after you made something and you're like, what does this remind me of? And you're like, oh yeah, it looks like the Fourth Spirit from Princess Mononoke, or you know, that candlestick from Crimson Peak. Like, that's where half the time you don't even realize that it's like influencing you. But yeah, and there's some amazing jewelry makers out there right now on Instagram and everywhere that are doing things that are similar. And I'm always afraid, especially with like stuff that's like not super recent. Like, I don't know how many people even still really know what the Last Unicorn is, especially if they're not in our generation that was raised with that. So it's like, how would people even get it? Like, and unfortunately, as an artist who makes art that also has to pay some of the bills, like, you kind of have to take that into consideration. It's like,
Right.
will people understand it? Are people still interested in this? But I did make a piece based on the glamour spell from The Craft that went over really, really well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
So-
remember vividly that piece. Like, oh my God, it was so good.
Well, and it's funny, like, I was dreaming about it one night, and that's how it like came to, because I probably had just watched The Craft, because again, another one that I just will put on in the background when I'm making or doing whatever, and I like it just literally like came to me in a dream. I know that's super corny sounding, but and that's how that piece came to life. So
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm like, sometimes I just think about that piece. It was so pretty. It was like gorgeous.
So, but I also, this is like like the second or third time you've talked about The Craft. So, you know, it's like you could probably clearly do a whole line based on The Craft.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just say, speaking of The Craft, and since we've already kind of like broken the seal on it. Shannon C, you'll remember this when we were in our shitty little garage band in high school.
Oh my God. Yeah.
We literally put on The Craft and came up with so many like band names.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I would say that movie probably changed the lives of more teenagers than like, you know, any major blockbuster today. Like, if you saw that movie when you were 13, you were like, "Oh, this is it." Like,
no, because when she says, "We are the weirdos, mister."
Yes.
Like,
yep.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like the number of times I have screamed, "These are my gifts."
Oh my God, these are my gifts. Yes.
Yeah.
When all the sharks are like washed up on the beach, and she gets that fucking psycho look on her face.
Dude,
like,
Fairuza Balk is like, oh my God, like, and you know, just everything about her. Like, nobody I've ever seen in anything except for maybe Helena Bonham Carter can play crazy quite like Fairuza Balk. And you know it's because that's the way they just are. You know what I mean? Like, but Nancy in that movie, iconic.
Truly.
But also I would say, I think as a teen, you know, it's like you want to be one of the cool witches, like Firuza Balk, even, because she's just so angsty in that movie too.
Right. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
like as a teen
But-
watching The Craft too, you're like, do I like really even care about Robin whatever's you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
she's like not. But okay, but I think it's funny. Speaking of Saturn Returns, I find that like now that I'm fully a grown up, I'm like the lady at the witch store.
oh yes.
The lady
yes.
at the witch store is who I want to be
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's like we've come through our angsty, witchy teenage years. Now we're here. We're grown up
Right.
witches.
Mhm.
It's been
We
quite
will
the
sell. We
evolution.
will sell shit to the baby witches.
Yes. Yes. And
Exactly.
apparently look the other way when they shoplift.
Well, I
You
think
know.
she knew. I think she knew, and they did end up paying for it.
Yeah, they sure did.
You know,
Right.
so.
Yeah, that is my favorite when we find out that like younger people are listening to the podcast
Mm.
because once in a while we'll hear from like an 18 or 19-year-old and I'm like, "Oh my god, the next
Cute.
generation."
Like literally cute. Like
Yeah.
who are you? You're a baby.
Yeah, I love it.
Don't join a
Well-
cult. Hey, but it's also kind of cool that we can be here to be like, don't join a
Mhm.
cult.
Right.
You know, like keep your rational thinking skills intact. And
Well, and like I worked with again retail, so you've got a lot of like 20-year-olds. And like so many of them I've been like, have you seen The Craft? Have you seen Practical Magic? You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't, first off, where is your mother? But like, also, how has nobody's like, and it's because, you know, it just didn't happen during, like, there's plenty of movies from the 80s and 70s that I haven't seen that I'm sure are iconic, but it's just like, okay, well, let me just give you a list. I've actually got them all on DVD. I'm gonna need these back for when the next person tells me they don't know what any of these are.
Right. Although
Report
speaking
in
of
a week.
speaking of Practical Magic, the ants from Practical Magic are also
Yes.
very, very much witch goals. And that
Mhm.
house, that house.
Every person, I don't care if you're a witch or just you, everybody wants to live in that
Everybody wants to
gorgeous
live in that house.
Victorian house by the sea. I mean, like the greenhouse, the kitchen, the attic. Like what?
Oh,
What is-
yeah. Yeah, Eric and I have agreed that when we're done with LA, we want to like save up a little nest egg so we can buy a haunted Victorian house in like Northern California. But I did get like my neighbor one day was like, you know, the front of your house with all of the plants, it just reminds me of Practical Magic. And I was like, cool, so I can die now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
that
like
is,
literally the
all I've
highest praise.
ever
The highest
wanted.
praise.
I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank
And you
you
know,
so
sadly, it wasn't like an actual house, like it was a set.
I mean,
and,
that's fine. That's fine. I can suspend my disbelief.
right. Yeah, it's like that's what we have problems suspending the disbelief of. It's not like the bringing people back from the dead or whatever, but like sadly, the
Right,
house
right.
is- yeah.
Yeah, the house was happening.
That's the real
Uh,
disappointment there.
Mhm.
Well, I guess anything else you want to talk about? I know we don't want to like take up too much of your time.
Also,
Uh,
we're famously recording the regular episode kind of right after we get off of this too.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're doing a double hitter.
Yeah.
Ooh, Yeah.
Sports metaphors. Call me Sporty
I
Spice.
sort of
baby.
get it.
I only get it because it's a colloquialism.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a baseball thing. Doubleheader.
Is it?
Probably.
I don't
I don't know. We've got fucking 3 witches on here. I think we're probably the wrong group to be asking what that actually means.
would say-
Coming next week to the Ones and Fronds Network are our sports podcast.
Right.
Can you imagine? It's like each of us has like a sport we can talk about. You can talk about tennis, I can talk about volleyball, and then we're out.
Oh, you know what I think we should close on? Because the people on the Patreon are obviously also going to listen to the episode, but I do like that we've been putting this in the episode. So Shannon, to you, I ask, when did you feel the most magical this week?
This week. Well, okay, I actually do know when it was. And this is funny because I wasn't actually, I mean, I've done I've done tarot pulls and I've done witchy things this week, but the most magical I felt this week was yesterday. I was driving home from getting Chinese food, which is about a 30-minute drive because, again, I live in the middle of nowhere. So I was driving home from getting Chinese food, and it was like almost dark, but not quite. So the sky was like purple, and like I was taking the back way, so it was like country roads, fields, forest, and like blasting like old like kidney thieves, like
Oh wow.
just yeah. I mean, I should tell you that my musical tastes pretty much stopped developing after high school. So but yeah, just listening to like loud like witchy music with the windows down and like, you know, your hair blowing in the wind and everything, and
Oh
like
yeah.
that aesthetic was very much like
Yeah, you're like, I am made of magic right now.
exactly.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh,
With my Chinese
oh.
food in the passenger seat.
Oh, delicious food is magic.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you know, I'll give you a little bit of like a sneak peek of the episode we're about to record. But my answer to that question this week is very, very similar. Like
Yes.
so we were kind of like walking or so because I work so late, we often close down the bar.
Mhm, mhm.
And after closing down the bar is when I get dropped off at home. So it's like 3 a.m.
Right.
But it's so quiet.
Mhm.
And I do talk about them on the show, but we have these really, really, really big old growth oak trees in my apartment complex.
Yes.
And so I was like, my little path home is like under one of those trees. And I was just like standing under the tree. It was so quiet. And I literally had just stopped to like just breathe in the silence for a second. And then up in the tree, I heard we have all these little like Eastern barn owls that are especially this time of year, but they're kind of like tiny. They're like tiny owls.
Yeah.
But they you know, they still kind of have that loud like thing that they do. And so I was just like standing under this tree, just like, oh my God, it's so nice and quiet. And then I just hear the little owl in the tree. And yeah, that was when.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
I took a bath yesterday, and I will talk about a little bit about my meditation, but I got to see my like spirit guide that I see most often, which is a sea turtle that talks to me a lot.
I love that.
But also Isis made an appearance. I have not seen her in years, and she was there. So it was a very it's just funny because I know meditation is not for everybody.
Right.
But oh my God, I was not on planet Earth for a while yesterday, which was really nice. It's been a long time since I've
anything to check out of planet Earth right now would probably be super fun.
Yeah, it was good until my spirit guide, until the turtle was like, you've got to go home now. Like you got to go back now.
Okay, bye.
Yes. So Nick, it's funny that you said that too, because it's like, it reminds me of this quote, because like obviously 3 a.m., you know, especially for, you know, females, it's like you're kind of taught from a young age that you shouldn't be outside by yourself after dark because, you know, monsters or, you know, like dangerous guys or whatever, like, but one of my favorite quotes, and I don't even remember who it's from, but I bet Shannon knows because it sounds like something Shannon would have read, is that a witch shouldn't be scared even in the darkest forest because she should know in her heart that the most dangerous thing in that forest is her.
Oh my gosh, that is very familiar, and I cannot remember where it's from either. It will come to me.
It's
but I love that.
it's like feeling at home in the silence for like 1 second actually is because a lot of times you do get that anxiety of like when you're in that situation. And you know, like I'm like 5'7", 5'8", like 140 pounds soaking wet. Not a lot I can physically like do against, you know, like if it was, you know, some big guy or something trying to come after me. So it's like you do get a little
scared,
you know, but actually just, but it's like, you know, but it's like I was at, you know, and it's like I was on my way home, and like actually it is so, it's nice actually to appreciate living in such a safe place that you can
Mhm.
like actually just like be out and like just breathe for a second and like it's not nothing bad's gonna happen. Like you just know, like you know, a lot of people don't have that,
Mhm.
and it's really it sucks, but also like appreciating the times that you do have where you're like, oh yeah, I'm actually safe right now and things are okay, you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely.
I love that. Well, to close out, Shannon, we have to get you to say our catchphrase. Can we get a blessed be bitches from you?
Blessed be bitches.
Blessed
Yay!
be all you creative bitches.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Cool.